For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini, former ANC Youth League National Task Team and former member of the Regional Executive Committee in Tshwane. Rebone joins me to discuss his book titled The Rise and Fall of the ANC Youth League. So, Rebone, in the book, you give us two reasons why you decided to write this book, and one of them being the ANC Youth League failed to support the students during the Fees Must Fall campaign. Can you briefly explain why you blame the Youth League?
You must remember that the Fees Must Fall, it's not a new thing within the structures of the ANC Youth League. This is something that the Youth League historically has been championing because one of the role of the Youth League is to champion interest of young people. And what was interesting about this is that we had just had a congress of the ANC Youth League, and the leadership, I think it was a week or 2 weeks later, when we saw students from across different higher learning institutions taking up the streets, and there was absence of the ANC Youth League leadership, NEC especially, where even the president of the Youth League, he was not seen anywhere with the students, you know, and making the right noise with the students themselves, you know. So for me, I felt that this is not the Youth League that I know. The Youth League that I know would be on the ground because it's one of its twin tasks is to champion the interest of young people.
Why do you feel strongly that the disbandment of the ANC Youth League NEC in 2013 weakened the Youth League?
If you check, today we still have a task team. It was disbanded in 2013. It's 2027 years down later. We're sitting with a task team, which is led by ANC NEC members at this present moment. Now that shows, that's evidence that that 2013 decision has really impacted the Youth League not to be an organization that was known for in the past, an organization that was amongst the people, an organization that lived and breathed amongst the community and the society at large. So as long as 7 years later, we still have a task team, that shows you that the challenges of the Youth League are so deep and they have not been resolved post that disbandment in 2013.
You also share information that was interesting to me on how the ANC Youth League was formed at Walter Sisulu's house in Orlando in 1943. It was for the cause of introducing a more militant and vibrant dimension to the ANC. Can you remind us the reason why the Youth League was formed?
The discussion started is in 1943, but it was formally launched in 1944. And the reason why the young people at the time, the likes of Walter Sisulu, Tambo, the former president of the ANC, and the former president of the Republic and the ANC, Nelson Mandela, felt that the ANC is more of an elite organization. It's not a mass mobilization organization, because then the ANC would participate in a process of writing to the Queen petitions, writing to the apartheid government petitions, trying to engage them on the inequalities that were happening in the country. But once the Youth League is formed, you look at how then it changes the struggle in South Africa. For an example, in 1952, then you have then a defiance campaign, you know. So it shows that now it started now giving life to the ANC. And that's why the Youth League in its nature, since its formation is to bring new ideas to the ANC, the Youth League is a body of opinion. So it was able then to change the struggle so that it can be more radical, but also can have South Africans taking part in fighting the brutal system at the time.
Why do you argue that the Youth League of today are like a shadow of the ANC Youth League leaders of the 1940s generation?
The Youth League of today, in my view, is more inward looking. they are not representing the generation of 1944 when the ANC Youth League was formed. Because that generation of 1944, they had a vision and a mission. And their mission, we can say in 1990, it was accomplished, which in the form of political freedom. Now, in 2011, at the ANC Youth League Congress in Galaga, we then resolved that economic freedom in our lifetime. Now, since 2011 up to now, we have not championed that struggle of economic freedom in our lifetime because of the inward looking of factional battles within the ANC and forgetting that we've got a constituency which is multi-class to represent in society, because the Youth League is not a Youth League of only members of the Youth League, but it's a Youth League that must represent aspirations of every young person in South Africa, rally them behind the banner of the ANC, but most importantly, champion the interest of young people. And as things stand, we are not able to see a Youth League that is occupying its rightful position in society, dealing with issues, because there are daily issues that are affecting the society. I mean, the other day, there was the issue of cliques, the racial issue of cliques, that was taking part. And because of now you have disbanded the ANC Youth League, now you have structures of the Youth League, which mainly some are led by people who are in their 40s, who were last elected, some in 2013, some in 2014. So they are not preoccupied with what is happening. They are not looking at the political landscape in the country, how it is moving.
And as a former member now of the ANC Youth League task team, what do you think the current ANC Youth League leadership should do to take the lead in the issues that are affecting the youth in our country?
As things stand, as I indicated, the ANC Youth League is led by ANC NEC members. The ANC needs to have a frank and honest discussion and starts to ask itself, what kind of a youth league does it want, or does the ANC require today? Because if you have a youth league that does not exist, then who is bringing the new ideas to the ANC? We've got a very youthful population. So one would start by saying that the ANC must first start having that discussion, with the hope that once the ANC can come to a sober minded and resolve on allowing young people to take charge of the ANC, because right now the Youth League is in the hands of the ANC. It is not with the young people. But what is important is that we need young people who are not preoccupied about living a lavish lifestyle, because the revolution, it is never about a lavish lifestyle, but the revolution is about serving the people. We need young people that will be active in their communities where they reside and work hand in hand, whether even with community NGOs, be the voice, because the Youth League, what is nice about it, that it sits at the table with the ANC, which is a ruling party. The Youth League must be saying to the ANC, out there, these are the challenges. Out there, this is what needs to happen, because it is not a one glove size fits all. Our challenges differ in different communities. So you need a Youth League that will also understand that how it engages the ANC, but being community activist must be in the forefront of every member of the Youth League, because Youth League members were taught that as a Youth League member, you are an organizer. So we need young people must go back to their communities, organize themselves, and serve the people, and not put material things before the organization.
That is powerful. And in the book, you also share a letter that was written by former AFP leader Prince Mangusu, who was once a member of the Youth League between 1948 and 50. Can you tell us about that letter?
It's not a letter, it's a quote, you know, when it talks about the youth, that they have energy, you know, as young people, you know, in a sense, you know. And I mean, him being at Forte, you know, at the time when he was a member of the ANC Youth League, and how energetic they were as young people. And that's why, for me, I don't want to write a book that only narrates about ANC comrades, but I felt that this book must also talk to those who were once also members of the ANC Youth League, and not be seen as a factional book of a certain faction within the ANC or ANC Youth League. So he talks about that young people in general have the energy, you know, to champion things. Yeah.
You also mentioned how the 1944 youth was highly educated compared to the current leadership of today. Can you explain the problem of the Youth League being used by the older comrades as part of the ANC factions, as you've mentioned?
You know, the 1944 generation, rightfully so, most of them were highly educated, most of them went to Forte. They had an option of whether they join the struggle or they pursue their careers in different fields. We all know that President Mandela was a lawyer and so forth. Now, post-1994, the ANC is unbanned. Post-1990, the ANC is unbanned. Post-1994, the ANC is in government. Now, everyone can become a member. Now, you must remember then, we start now to join politics. It's just not about now for everyone about the liberation, because now we have got that political freedom. Now we have been liberated. So your life is not under threat, you know, from the brutality of the police or the military. So, and poverty also plays a role, because some young person might see someone with a BMW and say, hey, I want that BMW. And maybe the quickest way is to join the Youth League, you know, for me to drive that BMW or that Mercedes-Benz, you know. But you see, they're joining for the wrong reasons. They're not joining to say, I want to serve the people of my community. I want to do what is right by my community. So then you have now young people who are just joining for selfish interest, not some join to serve, but some also join to gain material things. And the ones who join to gain material things will do anything to make the leadership love them, because for them is to try and maybe secure a job in the municipality, or secure a job in the provincial government, or secure a tender, or what we call today e-wallet, you know, which has become very popular, you know, amongst us as young people. So the problem is that the generation of 44, they joined because they wanted to liberate the people. But post 1994, in the NC's government, some joined politics for material conditions to make sure that they live a better life, because we can't lie and say there is no inequalities in 2020 in South Africa. We see poverty every day. We see how some people, even especially now with COVID, you know, there are people that have lost jobs. You know, there are people who might not have had breakfast this morning because of poverty that they find themselves in, you know, and some will find ANC as a vehicle to get out of that poverty, but for themselves.
Now, the EFF, led by a former ANC Youth League leader, Julius Malema, has emerged as a leading voice on youth issues in our country, even though you do mention that their agenda is drawn from the ANC Youth League resolutions that were taken in 2011. You also mentioned what happened at the funeral of Umama Winnie Mandela. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, it was very interesting, you know, and painful, because Mom Winnie, we knew her, how she loved young people from even the era of the late president of the ANC Youth League, Peter Mugaba. We know her relationship with our former president of the ANC Youth League, Julius Malema, who is now the economic freedom fighter. You had a process also at the memorial service where there were squabbles, amongst youth league leaders on their own personal issues, but also not occupying that space, of leading as young people, showing the nation how Mama Winnie was loved by youth leaguers, which was painful that they failed to occupy that space, the youth league leadership at the time.
You've just mentioned Peter Mokaba. I was also about to say you can't talk about the ANC Youth League and not mention Peter Mokaba. So do you think that the ANC Youth League can learn from his leadership skills?
The person who made me to love politics when I was growing, it was Peter Mokaba. Fortunately, I was a bit older when he was leading the Youth League, so I got to see him and the militancy that he had post the 1991 conference of the ANC Youth League after the unbanning of the ANC. And this is what Rapumulekana says in the book, who led as the Secretary General of Peter Mokaba, that we can't also want to do things as the generation of 1991. The political landscape has changed, a lot has changed. Not saying that we don't need a Peter Mokaba, but we need a different kind of breed in 2020 to lead the ANC Youth League, but still be militant, be sharp, as Peter was, be charismatic, because young people in their nature, they like charismatic leaders, So he had that charisma, Comrade Peter Mokaba. And that's what I'm saying, around the age of 6, 7, when I'm watching TV, I could see this man, I'm like, wow, and I want to be part of this organization. I remember in 1994, when the elections took place, and I went to and sit at the polling station from morning until evening because I was so excited, to see the long queues, to see people happy, wanting to be happy that they're voting for the first time and they're voting for the ANC, that finally they have been liberated, So we need a Peter Mokaba, but a Peter Mokaba of today's era to handle the issues also according to what is required in today's era. Because as I'm saying that, you must remember that post 1994, you've also had a lot of young people who are now in different sectors, who want to study. So when you engage, you can't engage them the same that you will engage a young person in the village or a young person in Sentin. So you need a young person who's an all-rounder, who's able to capture the imagination of all young people in South Africa and not only a particular grouping in terms of the young people.
You also mentioned the fall of the ANC Youth League under Colin Maine. What went wrong?
I think the fall, if you go back to also 2005, there were challenges building up to Polokwane conference of the ANC. The former deputy president of the Youth League, Rebone, who had a different view, who was supporting the former president, Thabo Mbeki. He was dealt with. We go to the 2008 Congress of the ANC Youth League in Mangaung, where Julius was elected. But that Congress, what transpired there, it was a new tendency that we had never seen in the ANC Youth League. And this was after Polokwane conference, where we saw a lot of things happening at the ANC conference in 2007. So now you have a Youth League Congress where top five results are announced of the officials who have made it, and the young people rebel, saying these are not the results. The Congress had to be adjourned, and it was later reconvened in Nazareth. And the ANC then said, as young people, you must accept the results as they are of the top five and continue to vote for additional members because there was a view that Comrade Saki Mofokeng must become the president. So the contestation was about disputing of those results that they felt that Saki Mofokeng had won that conference. So the problems also start from there, you know, and then you later come and then they get disbanded, and then we get appointed as a task team, we get disbanded also, and our task team is appointed, and that then takes the youth league. But the problem is that under the Colin Maine era, the youth league was too quiet on a lot of issues. So there was vacuum in the country. And that has affected the ANC also losing the youth vote, in spite of the challenges that the ANC faces in society on issues of corruption and so forth. But they were not able, as the Youth League, to play their role, their twin task role of championing interest of young people and rallying them behind the banner of the ANC. They were more preoccupied with factional battles, as now we're preparing now to go to the 2017 conference of the ANC in Nazareth. So everything was so much inward looking, and that's why you have a situation where they failed to take most structures to Congress, that leadership. You have regions like in Gauteng. I know Sidibeng last went to its regional congress in 2013. It's 2020, so they've been in office for 7 years. Even the provincial executive committee in Gauteng has been in office for around 7 years. You go to Northwest, it's the same thing. You go to Northern Cape. So they even failed to just, you know, renew the mandate of structures within the organization. So there was a lull internally and there was a lull externally.
Hope that this book will rekindle the youth of today in 2020, as you put it, to fight for what is right for our country and not to look at what will benefit themselves if they join the Youth League. So lastly, if I may ask, what else will the readers get if they were to get this copy?
I mean, for me, this is a good book. It also teaches you about how the ANC operated in exile after the banning. What you call in exile, you had the ANC youth and student section, you know, and how even the logo of the ANC Youth League came about, fight, learn, produce, how they were able to organize the youth in the camps, the youth that were working for the ANC, and the youth that were students, you know, and the importance of the role that those who were in exile were playing to make sure that they get scholarships. That's why you've got a lot of them when they came back post 1994, they were in government, senior position, and so forth, because of that role that was also played in exile to make sure that the ANC governs, then it has prepared a crop of young people to be given responsibility in government. So it's a book that at least gives you a sense of also how even those, like there's a guy called Vuyo Skoia, who I engaged with in the book. He was part of the Masupatsela, you know, how they were organized, because before you became a member of the Youth League, then you're a member of Masupatsela, which, by the way, Maxi Sulu was also a member of Masupatsela before the banning of the ANC. So it shows how young people were organized, you know, they were taught, you know, about the revolution, you know, because even today we're still not liberated as long as we don't have economic freedom, as long as there's still the inequalities, the struggle continues for liberation of those who were marginalized for the longest time.
That was Rebone speaking to Crema Media's Polity about his book titled The Rise and Fall of the ANC Youth League.